Hello everyone, welcome to our series on environment, and let's continue with this Forest Conservation Act. So our story today is going to the same story which we discussed yesterday. So basically I was talking about this village forest. So basically this act basically considers four types of forests: reserved forest, protected forest, village forest, and private forest. And the degree of protection of reserved forest is more than protected, more than that of village. So when you say all activities are permitted unless prohibited in protected forest, you can refer it to as firewood collection, grazing, okay, uh, agricultural practice. And when you say all activities are prohibited unless permitted, so the same story, the same activities, but they're actually prohibited unless permitted. You need specific permission if you want to do certain activities in reserved forests. Okay, so basically forest officers and their staff administer this act. Okay, forest officers and their staff, and as per the provisions of this act, prior approval of the central government is required for the purpose of diversion of forest land for non-forest purposes. Okay, so an advisory committee is formed under this act. Advisory committee is formed under this act, which basically advises the government, yeah, with regards to the approvals. So that's why when I was saying about forest advisory committee, so it basically advises the government with regards to the approval. And one thing I would like to just mention here, when I was talking about forest advisory committee, it assesses land request validity. Land request validity, and also takes into consideration the potential damage to local ecology. So all the local wildlife and wildlife habitats. Okay. So when you say land request validity, what happens is if a particular request is put for the purpose of diversion of a forest land into non-forest purposes. So what happens is there will be a screening committee at the local level which takes this request, and then there will be a regional committee. So from the screening committee, they'll take this request. Once they approve, it will go to this regional committee at the regional level, not just with, when you say screening committee, it is at the local level. So this regional committee is with regards to the region, as like consider for instance the southern region as a whole. Then it goes to the central level. So at the central level, here you can see. So here there will be screening committee, here there will be reasoning committee. So, and one more committee at the level of the center. Okay. So this is how the request validity is checked in three steps. Okay. So at this central level, this is assessed by forest advisory committee. Okay. So with regards to the I'd like to talk about this Godavarman versus Union of India case. So there's one Supreme Court order with regards to this. So basically in this case, what happened was this Godavarman, he filed a writ petition regarding with regards to the Nilagiri Hills for illegal, I mean with regards to the illegal conversion of forest land for the purpose of non-forest purposes, I mean for the purpose of timber especially. So basically in this case the Supreme Court gave an order that the conservation of forests, that is the nature of land classification of forests, I'll explain it, don't worry. The nature of classification of forests and also the nature of ownership of forests. So it doesn't matter when the forest conservation, when forests have to be conserved, in simple terms, I have actually, it reads in different way, I have put it in simpler terms, okay? The forests have to be conserved. So basically, whenever the conservation of forest has to be taken into account, the nature of land classification of forests in the sense, that means that particular forest may be recorded as forest or may not be recorded as forest. So ecological function of forests is more important. You can write it under nature of, so within land classification what they mean is, it doesn't matter, the ecological function of forest, that is if the forest is performing various functions as the carbon sequestration, climate change mitigation, disaster risk management, or as flood mitigation, okay, so all of these functions are being performed even if it is not recorded as forest in government official records, though not recorded as forest in government official sense, in the government records, but still that is considered a forest if it is serving the ecological function. So that means such a forest land should not be. Why that order was given is to ensure protection to the land, even if it is not considered as forest under government records, but still the forest requires conservation because it is performing various key functions as biodiversity conservation, carbon sequestration, climate change mitigation. So taking into consideration the ecological function. So here ecological function is given greater importance than the administrative importance or the administrative classification, you can say. And also with regards to the nature of classification of forests, they can be, I mean in the sense, resort forests, village forests, protected forests, it doesn't matter. Even if it is not classified, like it can be community forest, whatever is the classification of forest, all of that is considered as forest land. So again, with regards to the nature of ownership of forest, it can be public or private. So with regards to, it can be community owned, that is by the tribal community, by the local community, or it can be owned by private people, individuals, organizations, or it can be owned by the governments itself, state government. So it doesn't matter. So forest basically means, I mean, they do not take into account the nature of land classification, the nature of classification, the nature of ownership of forest whenever the forest conservation has to be taken into account. That means when they're trying to divide forest land for the purpose of non-forest, what does that forest include is, that forest can include any forest, irrespective of nature of land classification, nature of ownership. Along with that, the forest also includes the dictionary definition, you can say. So when you see this dictionary definition of forest, what it means is basically greater than, I mean the canopy density is greater than 10%. Along with that, the canopy density has to be greater than 1%, but that plus that area has to be bearing vegetation. So this is the dictionary meaning. So the Supreme Court said that when it tried to interpret the Forest Conservation Act of 1980, so it basically said the forest includes the dictionary term, not only includes dictionary term, but also this. So when you say here, when we are saying that the judiciary stepped in, the Supreme Court tried to interpret it, what does it indicate? It is one of the stellar examples of judicial activism. You see, you try to interconnect things, okay? This is extremely important. So this is a concept of polity actually. So when you say judicial activism, what it means, courts, especially higher courts, they play an important role. They play a very proactive role, to be frankly speaking. They play a very, to be precisely speaking, sorry, play a proactive role in interpreting the laws, in not just interpreting or in expanding the scope of a particular law, you can say. Basically the focus is ensuring social justice, so they basically play a very proactive role. They step in as administrator. So when this man filed a writ petition, so the Supreme Court stepped in. It tried to proactively regulate the felling of trees. You can write it here actually. The Supreme Court stepped in order to regulate the felling of trees, in order to regulate the transport of the timber or the forest produce, and also it stepped in order to ensure the sustainable usage of forests. Okay, so all of this is clearly indicates that the judiciary is playing an extremely active role or proactive role, so which is a clear case of judicial activism. And also this is what is with regards to the TN Godavarman versus Union of India case. So the Supreme Court tried to interpret the definition of forest. So he filed a writ petition. Supreme Court tried to interpret the word definition of forest. This is an extremely important case. Okay, basically 1996 it is. Goodman versus Union of India. Then with regards to the Forest Conservation Authority, I think I did not mention one point. It approves division of forest land for non-forest purposes. And they have mentioned, right, it assesses land request validity, potential damage to local ecology, wildlife habitats. And also here mentioned, it also assesses impact minimization plans. There's some point which I missed, I guess, actually. Not sure what's the point is. Impact minimization plans is when they try to develop, any hydrological project or any development project, infrastructure project, they evaluate the impact, the environment impact, the socio-economic impact. You see, a particular forest may provide livelihood to lots of people. So when the displacement of these people happens, it can impact the livelihood of that particular people because they're dependent upon this forest. So it can have socio-economic implications. It can lead to disturbing the socio-economic condition. It may lead to sometimes poverty also. So government needs to provide there's of course a space for rehabilitation also. So they try to evaluate it in terms of environmental impact. So when all of this, particularly with regards to the impact, that means here environmental impact, when they say it can have a devastating impact on the environment also. So obviously all of that has to be taken into account. So it has to be designed in such a way that the impact on the environment, socio-economic conditions, all of that has to be minimized. So it basically evaluates the impact minimization plans. That's it for today. Thank you. Stay tuned for more updates. If anything is left out, I'll definitely discuss in the next class. Okay, I'll try to start a new topic as well. Thank you. Stay tuned for more updates.